Welcome. We are so glad you've joined us for our first Native Plants at Noon of 2022. I'm Tammy Thompson, Outreach and Conference Manager for Deep Roots. This is my favorite day of the month, as you all know. I'm excited you're all here. I look forward to seeing you all in 2022 as we continue to unpack the benefits and beauty of native plants and the wildlife and creatures that they support. We were so excited to hear from you over the last couple of months as we asked for your feedback on what you wanted to see at Native Plants at Noon for 2022. And we've made some changes, and we're really excited to let you know that a few months over the next year, we are going to take Native Plants at Noon on the road. And by that, I mean that we are going to discover different Missouri Department of Conservation sites all over the state of Missouri to examine the native landscapes there and how they are cared for. So we're really excited. You heard it here first. So today, Alix and Cydney are going to start the discussion on native garden design. And as all of you know, design is foundational. And if we get stuck at this process, a lot of times we're frozen and we just can't go on. So they're gonna get us jump started and help us understand how to get going, how to get started, and maybe some of their favorites as well. So during the program, if you have any questions, please note those on the Facebook comments or in the Q&A tool on Zoom. I will be using chat to give you information. And if you want to say hi or where you're from in the chat, go ahead and do that. But other than that, put your questions in Q&A so that we don't miss them. So let's get started. And first, we want to express a big thanks to the Missouri Department of Conservation for their partnership on this series and everything they do to help encourage and empower people to plant more natives. With that, we want to welcome landscape specialists Cydney Ross and Alix Daniel at the Anita B. Gorman Discovery Center. Cydney and Alix, take it away.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us. This is Alix.
This is Cydney.
And as Tammy mentioned, we're the native landscape specialists here at the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Discovery Center in Kansas City. And we have a very colorful presentation for you today. For those in the Kansas City area, it's freezing outside. So we thought we'd bring some inspiration and some tips and tricks for planting your native landscape garden. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. Okay. So there are a lot of different ways to approach native landscape design, but the first thing that we like to think about is how to get inspired. Missouri is full of some really beautiful natural areas, and Alix and I both go hiking quite a bit, almost every weekend, even when it is cold outside. But this is where we first look for inspiration because Mother Nature knows best.
Yeah, so when you're thinking about designing a garden, you want to think about what plants thrive in your local area. The more local, the better. So we always try and encourage people to get inspired by the natural areas that are closest to them and see if you can get plants that are closest to those species.
Yeah,
because you know those are going to thrive.
That's right. And so not only are you thinking about plants that are native to your ecoregion or your city, maybe more specifically, but also thinking about different sun types. So this example here from Paintbrush Prairie is a full sun situation. So when you're out in these natural areas, just kind of keep that in mind. If you're walking through the woods, it's going to be shadier woodland species, right? It seems obvious, but sometimes even myself, when I'm at one of our local native plant nurseries, I get really excited and see plants that I love that end up not fitting the situation I'm actually planning for. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're out in these natural areas. But yeah.
We're going to show some combinations of plants that are, pulled from these sort of situations that we think look good together and do well together, especially in the Midwest, Kansas City area in particular.
That's right. And so an example of that, here's a great woodland species combo. This photo is by Scott Woodbury from the Missouri Botanical Garden in St. Louis. We have some spring ephemerals here, Virginia bluebells and celandine poppy.
Yeah, these are two beautiful flowers that pop up just in the early spring. They're spring ephemerals means that the plant completes its whole life cycle before the trees have leafed out and take up all the sunlight. So it's the spring ephemerals are using all of the sunlight that's available really, really early. And these two species do a great job of that, and they're just stunning.
They're gorgeous. I love them. And we'll be seeing these here pretty soon to get through winter. Okay, so once you're inspired after visiting your natural areas, oh, and Tammy will put in the comments, MDC through their website has a great resource where you can find your local natural areas through our conservation area app. So check that out. But once you've been inspired, step 2 is do your research. I can't stress this enough. We've all been there. We've all picked up, like I just mentioned, going to your plant nursery, picking out a plant that speaks to you and realizing, oh crap, this doesn't work at all with what I'm trying to plant out. So do your research. Here are some great books that we like to recommend to kind of get started. We've also included Missouri Wildflower Nursery Catalog, just because it really lays things out. It shows you images. It talks about how these plants will work in a residential space, or how maybe they don't work as well in a residential space, but maybe a more natural garden.
Yeah, I love that Merv in the Missouri Native Plant or the Missouri Wildflower Nursery. He's got a rating scale from 1 to 4 for how well plants work in landscape specific areas, and that can be super helpful if you're trying to avoid those more weedy species and have some more. Well, when we're talking about planning, what you'd like to do is make your garden look intentional, because this is something that we run up against all the time, is wild native plant gardens looking a little bit too wild
and crazy or something like that.
We like them wild, but if you're trying to get a more manicured look, something with a bit more intention, it's really important to not just be a plopper like me, not just buy a bunch of random plants and throw them in wherever.
That's right. It's enticing, but
try to plop with purpose.
Plop with purpose. Yeah, there you go. So one other thing I want to mention is if you're not on the pollinator newsletter that's that Deep Roots puts out every month, do it. There's great resources on there, employment opportunities, funding, but
plant sale announcements,
programs, things like that. But they recently put up a blog post on how to design your garden. So definitely check that out. If you're not already signed up for their emails, you can go to Deep Roots website to get more information.
deeprootskc.org.
Okay, so I love to plan landscape designs. It's kind of one of my hobbies and interests. And I'm taking this bit of information directly from Planting in a Post Wild World, Claudia West and Thomas Rayner. They kind of lay out, when you're visualizing your landscape, breaking up into 3 sections. The first one being your structural layer. This is going to be your shrubs, trees, woody species, plants that really they maintain in the landscape year round, whether or not there's things are greened out. So
and they are determining the amount of shade and the amount of light that you have in your garden. So you can't really design any part of your garden until you know exactly what the light situation is.
Exactly. So start first and foremost with these structural species. And once you have that figured out, again, like Alex said, it's going to dictate the type of sunlight you have, maybe even the moisture of that area. And then you can think of your seasonal plants. So we talk about seasonal blooms year round, and what that means is making sure you have different types of species that bloom throughout the year. So a lot of times I see gardens that have a lot of spring flowering plants because we're all excited about spring. It's the first season to hit us up with green. But then there's not a whole lot of blooms happening the rest of the year. So kind of think about that as you're planning out your garden. And then once you have your structural plants, your seasonal plants, then you're also then going to think about your ground cover species. So that's the third and final layer. I would plan this last, but it's just as important. Ground cover species are your shorter plants that grow to be maybe 4 to maybe 8 inches tall, not much taller than that. They fill in the gaps between everything else and provide a green mulch, which helps prevent weeds from popping up and helps maintain moisture. I also recommend, I know this is a little controversial, but I think mulching the first year is fine. Light mulch, it's just to help with those same things until your native plants get established.
The idea behind the design is that so that you are taking up all the available space with the plants that you want. You don't want to leave a bunch of gaps for weeds and invasive species to come in. So in that first year, the mulch does cover the space between the plants that you've put in. But by the second, third year, your native plants should be at their mature height and mature size.
That's right. And that brings up a good point of figuring out different spacing and height guidelines for these plants. Where you buy your plants will give you this information, but I'm a little bit of a nerd and I like spreadsheets. So I put together kind of a species list for the projects I work on, and it outlines these different things. So I have a quick reference too, because I don't know about you, but I tend to have a million tabs open up on my phone or laptop when I'm figuring these things out. So sometimes it's best just to put it in one place. And then below, you'll also see I try to put a colored spreadsheet. So I see what's blooming when and what the colors generally look like, even if they're not in bloom. This kind of gives me a sense of color schemes I'm working with in my projects. And then for the creative types, or maybe even you don't consider yourself creative, I still encourage you to do a little sketch, a rough sketch to see, visualize what your planting is going to look like. Alix and I are volunteering our personal time to help with habitat restoration initiative with Gillen Park and the Pilgrim Chapel. They're designing native plant beds for that space right now. So here's some sketches I did. Again, really rough sketches. In the top left, you can see once we figured out what plants we wanted to use, really roughly drew in there kind of what they would look like, and then made a plant key at the bottom left so I could not overthink what these plants look like when I did my final concept drawing. Again, this is not a to scale rendering. This is really just to get a feel for the mood of this planting, if you will. And then if you do want to be more specific, you can really reference that spacing guideline and create a plan. This is a blueprint that I made for Primrose Prairie here at the Discovery Center. It features over 300 plants. It's very complicated, so I needed a really precise plan so that we could lay everything out and get them in the right spot. I use Adobe Illustrator, but there are tons of programs you can use to achieve this goal if this is what you're looking for, or just grab some pen and paper or pencil and paper and start
What
doing
are those
it
little
yourself.
rulers with the circles? in
Yes,
it?
I love those.
Got to get all your circle sizes.
That's right. So those are just some ways to start thinking about how to plan out your garden for the upcoming planting season.
And Cydney, aren't you holding a native landscape design intro
I
class
am.
in
So
February?
I am. So we went just a little bit in depth today on those different planning steps, but I'm going to go even further in depth with a virtual program at the end of February. I believe Friday, February 5th. We'll include this in the notes after this presentation. But if you want to learn more on how to do those plans, join me for that program in February.
She can teach you how to draw.
I can teach you how to draw. Anyone can do it, I promise.
right.
So, okay, without further ado, we're going to start talking about some of our favorite plant combos. But actually, I wonder before we start, should we take a couple quick questions, Tammy? Because, you know, we can talk forever. We want to make sure y'all get your questions in there.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. First question comes from Val. Val asks, what happens when you've tried out many plants to see if they would grow in your habitat and do not have a clean slate to work upon?
Ooh, that's tricky. That's
I love
where
that.
the plopping comes in.
Well, that's right. You know, the way I would approach this, and this is a tricky thing. I don't think I have the right way to do it, but a way I would do it is maybe take a photo, like try to get a photo of the whole area or a section of the area, and then maybe highlight different plants that exist there so that you can kind of step back and see where the gaps are, where you can add other plants. That could be one approach to doing it. What do you think?
For sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really love about native plants is that most of them, now don't come at me if this doesn't work for you. Most of them are fairly easy to move. They're
That's
going to
true.
tell you when they don't like a situation by not thriving. But if they are thriving and they're thriving a little bit too much, or they're thriving in a way where, I mean, we call it our native plant nursery, where
Yeah.
we have things that are if we can pull a lot of plants from transplants from like paths where they're growing into, or spaces where they're going where we need something else, they're pretty easy to transplant. So I would say, yeah, draw it up first. Make sure you got your tall
See where
plants
your
in the
gaps
back.
are.
That's where you
Yeah.
always do the
Right.
start.
Yep.
And then see where your gaps are and maybe move things around into the gaps.
Yeah.
that way.
That's a tricky
Or
problem, but we
or
all deal with
transplant
it.
them and give them away to your friends too if they're successful and you
Mhm.
don't exactly want them in that spot. That's another thing.
That's awesome. Here's a really good one, probably very common situation from Dana. I definitely want to plant the celandine poppy bluebell combo in front of a school that faces north, whose team colors are blue and yellow. But I don't want an empty bed the rest of the summer. How to approach that? And can I also mix in species that will bloom later in the summer? Will I have
Yes
to
and
do a
yes.
lot of cleanup? Okay.
Yes, you have to. Okay,
You
so
have
if
to.
you're planting with spring ephemerals, you have to. It's just like planting with like tulips. You need something else that's going to fill that whole space
Right.
throughout the rest of the year. So you really have to think. Spring ephemerals are worth it, but they're very tricky to design with because you do have to plan for that and make sure you've got enough space in each area. And oftentimes when you're planting spring ephemerals, you're planting bare root plants,
Right.
which makes it even harder because then it looks like you're planting nothing, and you have to trust the process with spring
And this
ephemerals.
is where planning would really come into
Yes.
to mark where you planted those spring ephemerals,
Oh,
because they go
definitely.
dormant. You don't really see them after they
Yeah.
are done blooming. So you want to make sure you aren't accidentally planting another plant right on top of those.
Yeah, for
roots.
sure. And you need full shade for that. If it's north facing, it still may get a little bit too much sun for those two species. So make sure there's actual full shade there. And the tricky part is going to be, this is hard because planning for full shade blooms throughout the rest of the year gets harder and harder because that light resource is gone.
Right.
So there's not as many things blooming in the woods in summer, and there's almost nothing blooming in the woods in fall. So to keep those colors going, unfortunately, you'd have to have a fuller sun bed. But I'm trying
Which
to
you
think
might.
of like
You very well could if there's
but
again, it
then
depends
the
on the
bluebells
site
and the
too.
celandine poppy wouldn't work.
Well, right. But so got to see, are there any other trees that are creating shade? Is the building creating enough shade?
But there are lots of woodland species. Actually, we're about to talk about some
the
woodland
ones on the
species that
screen
you
right
can
now would be
use.
great.
Yeah, that are going to provide cover, like ground cover all year or some color throughout the year too. So it may not be school colors later in the season, but there's definitely successional stuff that you can plant, and we're about to talk about those.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Do you ladies want one more question? Are you ready to move on?
I think we'll move on real quick.
Okay, we'll grab them later.
Awesome combos, and then we'll pop back up at the end to take a few more questions. So yeah, Wild Sweet William and Roundleaf Groundsel are two awesome combo plants. They are spring bloomers and they prefer a shadier situation, more of a part shade, part sun type of deal. They are shorter in height. Roundleaf Groundsel is a great example of a ground cover species. We like to plant it everywhere and anywhere we can. It grows slightly shorter than Wild Sweet William, so I like to I have a tendency to put Roundleaf Groundsel in the front, but that yellow and blue combo is fabulous.
And Roundleaf Groundsel is one that spreads really, really nicely, and you can dig transplants of it really easily, and they thrive.
We did that last year. That worked really well.
Yeah, it only blooms in the spring, and then it has really cute, fluffy, like dandelion looking seed heads, and then the stems die back, and you're left with that evergreen carpet of really cute little round scalloped leaves.
Yeah. Another shade combo is this one here. I like thinking about different textures too when I'm designing. So oak sedge has that nice fine texture. It's also a great transitional plant from lawn to garden. And then pair that with some spring bloomers like wild geranium and columbine. Columbine is one of the plants that you can cut back after it flowers, and it will reflower later. I also love how the leaves look. They're more of a semi-evergreen also. In fact, if you have this plant in your garden now, you should go outside, take a look, and see how beautiful it looks.
It might be putting up its spring foliage already.
It really could be.
It's kind of a purplish foliage when it's really small. It's really, really cute.
Super cute.
Yeah.
Another plant combo, this is for more of a sunnier situation, would be foxglove beard tongue, which you see on the left.
Although we have heard that you can grow foxglove in the shade. We're going to try that this year.
Yes, and if you do and it thrives, please let us know in the comments. We would love to know more about how you use this plant. But foxglove beard tongue is a taller full sun plant, or maybe not. So I like to have this one in the back and pair it with Lanceleaf coreopsis, which is that yellow cherry flower on the top right. And that Lanceleaf coreopsis is one of those plants you can deadhead and get multiple blooms, reblooms throughout the year. And it grows easily from seed. So if you're starting any plants from seed, you might try that. And then pair it also with purple poppy mallow, another great ground cover that loves the hot sun. We call it hot girl summer plant for a reason because it crawls up onto the sidewalk and really soaks in the rays, and it's just stunning.
And these are all actually plants that you well, the beard tongue looks really nice if you leave the seed heads.
I do like the seed heads for winter.
The basil foliage is nearly evergreen as well. The coreopsis basil foliage is nearly evergreen. The purple poppy mallow, I will say one thing is that when it starts to get really big and leggy and runs out of energy, just snap it off at the root and it'll start growing again. If you do that in summertime, you can get it to bloom even longer.
Yeah, I think we did that in like July last year.
Yeah.
So. Another great combo. Actually, if you look at the right of the screen, there's purple poppy mallow again at the Discovery Center, growing up through Prairie Dropseed.
Which can I say we did not put that in? It volunteered.
The purple poppy mallow did. Yeah, I just love how this particular plant, purple poppy mallow and wild petunia, they both are good ground cover species that grow up through grasses. I think it just adds another layer to your bed. And then on the left, we have Monarch's Delight. We're changing the name from butterfly milkweed. Pair that with Glade Coneflower. Glade Coneflower is one of the Echinaceas that blooms first in the spring. It's short, as the name indicates. It grows on glades typically, which has shallower soil. Like me, I'm a glade plant. So those two plants look really nice together, and they kind of overlap. So Glade Coneflower will bloom first, and then Monarch's Delight will bloom after. And so there's a little overlap.
And you'll get the monarchs feeding on the Glade Coneflower and then laying eggs on the butterfly.
That's right. Okay, and then I'm going to run through these real quick. I found these in a residential landscape over the summer. I really love, again, Asclepias tuberosa or Monarch's Delight paired with lead plant. They have some overlap. So as Monarch's Delight fades, lead plant begins to bloom, and the orange pollen on lead plant looks really nice with that Monarch's Delight. And then in the middle, if you're looking to pair a forb with a shrub, you might consider this. Again, these are full sun situations for the most part.
This is our chief combo.
This is the chief combo right here. So shrubby St. John's wort is that yellow flower in the center. It is a shrub, as the name indicates. And Royal Catchfly is a slender, taller forb. It's bright red. We don't have a whole lot of red flowers here in Missouri, but this is a striking combination. So I really love that. I snapped that earlier this year.
That's a hummingbird magnet
right there. Yeah, and shrubby St. John's wort is covered in bees.
Covered. They did a fast walk on it.
Yeah,
they run over the flowers.
They do. So that's a great pollinator combo right there. And then to the right, purple coneflower and Culver's root. I like the different. I think again thinking about shapes. The bold, broad flower of coneflower paired with the more kind of spike of Culver's root, I think is a really nice touch.
Okay, so this combination is for your wetter gardens. These are some species that would do well in a rain garden that stays pretty wet. They like to have moist feet, or at a pond edge. You could use these as well. Marsh milkweed, the first one, I think personally, from what I've seen, monarchs love marsh milkweed first. They will go after that one first. They will lay more eggs on marsh milkweed to the point where we can't really keep it alive here because it gets eaten every year, but we keep trying. Rose mallow is another one that is just a stunner. It's a tall, it's sold as a shrub actually, but you can cut it down at the end of the year, just like you would a forb. It's got a nice woody stem and a straight up structure, and that flower is true hibiscus. It's just stunning, and it blooms successionally up the stem, so you're getting blooms for a long time. And yeah, that one's beautiful.
It also looks really good as a seed head in winter time, or at the end of fall. It's really fuzzy and very cute.
It's so fuzzy. And then palm sedge is a sedge that we love and we try to use wherever we can because it has this great form that looks like the name palm, sort of palm tree looking. Yeah, sort of fans out. And it does really well in medium moisture to a little bit. It can handle a little bit more dry situation, but that's one of our favorite Carex, favorite sedges.
Sedge heads.
Sedge. And here is a classic combination of everything you need for late summer, early fall. If you're trying to attract butterflies, these three genus, or these three plants in all of these genus are perfect because you've got the liatris, the rough blazing star. That's the one up top. Whenever we can fit in a blazing star to a design or recommend a blazing star, if you have any sort of situation you can put a blazing star in, do it. It's worth it. They are monarch magnets, they're bee magnets. Everybody loves liatris.
They are. Oh, and these are all like full sun situations, right?
Yes, sorry, I didn't mention that. These are all full sun. These are tall grass prairie species to glade species here. So then we have smooth aster, which is a just continuous bloomer, covered. You can see in the picture there, it's usually covered in blooms, and that one's going to get a lot of pollinator action.
It bloomed
as well.
through December this year in some places. Like
Yeah,
it
it
was
does bloom
crazy.
really late.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the one on the bottom.
And our
left.
aromatic aster also same sort of.
Yeah.
If you have a situation first, you want a bigger aster, aromatic aster would be.
Oh,
really
you know
good
what? I'm thinking aromatic aster. My
That's
bad.
the one that
My
bloomed really
bad.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then on the right here, we have showy goldenrod, which a lot of gardens, well, anywhere you have a weedy patch, you're going to have Canada goldenrod, which is Solidago canadensis. But this goldenrod is the one you actually want. Solidago canadensis is way too aggressive for the home garden. Shouldn't be promoted. This goldenrod is going to give you the same amount of pollinator action, but in a much more manageable way.
An intentional way.
Yes.
It doesn't flop as much as long as it has enough sunlight anyway.
Yeah. It's much more well behaved. It's not as seedy and weedy as Canada goldenrod.
Yeah.
I really like that species.
Me too.
And then here we have a winter interest shade. Well, not shade, I guess.
It's like
Kind
a
of.
part sun.
Yeah, part sun, part shade combination here. So we have smooth hydrangea up in the top left there. And one of my favorite things about smooth hydrangea is what I learned just this year. The little flower you see that's with the big 4 petals, that's actually a fake flower used to bring in pollinators to the fertile flowers that are all around the top, all those little flowers. They don't have much of a show. This shrub has been bred to look now like our snowball hydrangeas, those giant bell whatever they're called,
Annabelle
bluebell,
or whatever.
yeah, those hydrangeas. But the actual flowers are those little tiny ones, which I think is fun. And then the purple coneflower is on the bottom left there with its little snow hats.
It's so cute.
I love its hats. And that one is just great. It stands up all winter. You're gonna get birds feeding on the seeds. And it's a great taller structural plant that works well in part shade and full sun.
Yeah.
And then on the right there, we got to have another sedge. This is Gray's sedge, which has one of the most interesting seed heads of all the
Little starburst.
Yeah, little starburst. Just really fun to look at. And that one stays semi-evergreen, I would say. It starts to green up. It stays green later. As you can see, this picture is in snow and it's still a little bit green down at the base. Another great sedge.
Yeah. Got to get your sedges in there if you don't have any in your garden.
Yes. Okay, so this is our last slide. So these are a few more winter interest full sun species. So in the top left there we have buttonbush, which is another one that you can use for rain garden situations for a little bit wetter soil. It naturally grows in standing water, but it can handle moderate, medium moisture as well. And that one's just stunning. It has big white flowers in the summer, late spring,
early summer. I call it the Dr. Seuss plant.
Yeah,
it's like puffy.
it's really cute. And then we have on the bottom left there is bee balm or wild bergamot, which is Monarch fistulosa, another one that stands up really well in the winter. You're going to get a lot of bird action on the seed heads there. That's a medicinal and edible plant as well. So that one's a nice addition if you've got the right spot for it in your garden. And then on the right there, we have false blue indigo, which is one of our favorite winter plants because you just
okay. I call it my goth baby because it just, with all the golds and browns in the landscape, this has a nice silvery charcoal leaf to it this time of year. And if the seed heads are still intact, if it didn't get blown to heck with all the wind we've had, those look really nice too. So it's one of my top picks for year-round interest, but especially in winter.
Yeah, so
yeah.
we miss plants. We know y'all
We
do
miss them
too,
so much, but we're so excited to be thinking about you all planning your gardens for this coming year. But yeah. So
Yeah.
Tammy, if we have some questions, I know we talk
We've
a
run
lot,
it
but we'd love to answer if we have some time.
You guys did great. We have a lot of people on, so we have a lot of questions. I know we won't get to all of them, but let me get you a couple that I think are going to speak to a lot of folks. This comes from Christine. She says that she planted native strawberries as ground cover, but it's become a little too aggressive. Any suggestions?
Rip it
Yeah,
out.
Rip it out. It is a
We
native
did the
plant,
exact
but-
same thing. We all learned together at the same time that wild strawberry is way too aggressive. Merv suggests if you use it, he suggests from Missouri Wildflower Nursery, he suggests giving it a 2-foot radius, so like 2 feet all around the whole plant and not planting that many of them. We used them as a ground cover in one bed. We lost that entire bed. It is now the strawberry patch.
Yeah.
So we do not recommend wild strawberry to people unless they have a situation where it's going to struggle.
I really want to see it compete with Creeping Charlie, a
Me
non-native
too.
plant. So if you have that growing
Yes.
in your front yard, maybe put some wild strawberry in there. But
Yeah.
that's a good reason to do a lot of research. If native plant nurseries or other folks are saying that a plant is super aggressive, it's a native and it's super aggressive, heed that warning because it probably will spread prolifically.
We are all learning together in this, and it's very helpful to know that
You're not
these
alone.
things are happening. Yeah, you're not alone.
Great question.
It is a great question. All right, Cynthia, I'm kind of scrolling through. Just to let everyone know, we will try to get all of your questions answered on Facebook. So if you don't get your question answered live, we will try to get those questions answered for you later on. So here's a question from Cynthia, and it's a great one. Are any of these plants black walnut tolerant?
Ooh,
The ones you
good
discussed.
question. Okay, so I will just say that I think Missouri Wildflower Nursery has walnut tolerance in their catalog, and I think Grow Native also has a section, and maybe Mobot, the Missouri Botanical Garden, each have sections on walnut tolerant plants.
I believe oak sedge might be. I could be wrong on this.
Yeah, but that's one of those things that you have to know first before you do anything else. You need to know your trees. You need to know specifically if you have a black walnut, then just start there. If you're designing underneath a black walnut, you're going to have a much more limited list of things that are tolerant. So I would just start with either the Mobot, I'll have to look that up, but I think it's on Grow Native or Mobot, a big list of walnut tolerant species.
Yeah. So. Also, go out to your natural areas and take a look and see what is growing under walnut trees already.
Yeah.
That's a good way to check it too.
We're very fortunate to not have to design beds under walnuts very
not often. Yeah.
So.
Perfect. Here's another one. I think this might be our last one for today. Would purple poppy mallow work in the hill strip?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Do we have example? Have someone who's done that already, right?
I'm sure there are. I just keep thinking of there's a bed up front at the Discovery Center. It is a very small bed surrounded by concrete. I mean, it's in a parking lot, totally surrounded, and it does beautifully there.
It loves the heat. It's like we said, it's like drawn to the heat of the sidewalk.
It just like spreads itself out, really soaks up that sun.
And you can mow it and it can be trampled. So we love using this plant in designs where there's going to be mowing up against the edge of a bed or foot traffic, children specifically, because it can handle that damage. Like I said, if it gets too big, which it will at some point, go over the edges of your house strip, all you got to do is snap them off at the base, snap them off without damaging the main taproot. You can just prune off the long stems and get them to regenerate.
Back. Yeah, I know it'll feel weird. It felt weird for me, but I trusted Alix and she was right. It does work, and
you won't be able to kill it.
You won't.
And most people know, but what is a hill strip?
It's the strip of land between the road and the sidewalk in your front yard. Yeah,
perfect.
I don't know if they call it that, but it's hell to try and grow plants there.
It's dry, it's hot, it's usually compacted soil. I mean, it's just nasty area, but
I love to see, I love seeing what native plant gardeners that I respect, some of them come up with the craziest plants to
I love
put
it.
in their
Ooh,
house
we should have a
strips.
house strip competition.
Yes,
Send
we
us your
should.
photos. We'd love to see what
Yeah.
you're planting in your
Design your
strip.
house strip. I mean, that's the best way to do it. And then we just need to mention really quickly that, like, if you're designing your house strip, that's going to be a very public facing
Yes.
garden. So this is even more important to make sure that you get the design right and that it
Mhm.
looks clean and intentional and
Don't
not
block the
messy.
sidewalk. Don't have
Exact-
plants that are way too tall.
Yeah, nothing that's gonna flop over, especially keep it short. That would be the best place to put your signage also, if you have
Yes.
some interpretive signage that people can see, because they'll be able to see it from the street.
Yep, that's so true.
Perfect. Well, thank you, you two. If I can, I'm going to start sharing my screen. So if I can get you to stop sharing yours, I appreciate it. I have learned so much. I'm going to take away plop. I'm going to take away plop with purpose for sure. That is my word
think
of
we need a
the phrase
sticker,
of the
like-
day. Perfect. You guys are just, oh yes, look at those are
Okay.
available on our website, on Deep Roots website. We are supporting a local artist
Andy,
there.
call out to our buddy there.
Nice. And Cydney has a wonderful personal connection to him. There are so many things that we can learn from you guys, and we're so appreciative of the time you took. You balanced shade, which a lot of us really struggle with. You know, if you have shade, we feel like we don't have as many options, but boy, if you love texture, that is your jam. You get a lot of texture in the shade for sure. So anyway, if for all of those who haven't been out to the Discovery Center, haven't been out recently, go out or go to any of the Missouri Department of Conservation sites. They're just teeming with color and textures right now. And to learn more about what's going on at the Discovery Center, you can go to mdc.mo.gov, search for events. You can search by the name of the Discovery or the conservation site, or you can search by your county or city, and they all pop up. It's just so exciting. The Deep Roots site also has many references to native plant garden design. So hop on over there and see what more you can learn. There's so much to learn, and there's so almost no way to kind of mess it up. Don't you think, ladies? You plant it, it doesn't work out, you move it. And I just feel like just not plopping without purpose, plop with purpose. But if it's not perfect, we're just going to make some progress here. So, and we're always adding new content to the Deep Roots site. While you're at the Deep Roots site, if you could make a donation, we would certainly appreciate that as well. Next week, we are going to have an exciting webinar. We will be doing a winter weather and wildlife webinar. Ooh, say that fast. With Elaine Hudlin. Elaine is the wildlife education specialist with the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, and she's going to walk us through a residential lawn that has a lot of natives planted in it. And she's going to point out the wildlife benefits, the wildlife going through there. And each season, we're going to return to this very same yard and see how the native plants morph and the wildlife that it supports through each season. So we're really excited to get that going next week. And a little hint, so if you haven't signed up yet and you live in the city, Elaine is also going to help us understand how better to manage squirrels in our lawns. So she has some tips and tricks to manage the number and the damage of squirrels. So I am super excited to hear about that. If anyone has wildlife concerns, sometimes it's the squirrels in the city. So we want to thank you. If you've missed any of our episodes of Native Plants at Noon, we have all of them recorded and up on our website. This one will probably be up by tomorrow. You can find them all at deeproots.org. And we're so grateful for your participation. And Cydney and Alix, we're so grateful for the information and how understandable you make it. We wish you a wonderful day, and we will see you back here on February 17th for the next one. Thank you.